In a decision that reverberated across the globe, the U.S. Supreme Court has struck down the Trump-era tariffs, a defining moment for American economic policy. The ruling dismantles a key pillar of the America First agenda and redefines presidential power over trade. Stock markets surged, currencies swung, and business leaders celebrated the end of years-long uncertainty. This isn't just about economics, it's about the rules that govern how nations interact. For years, tariffs reshaped global supply chains and fueled trade wars, pushing the world to the brink of protectionism. Now the court's decision signals a possible return to open, collaborative trade. The legal battle centered on a 1960s law granting the president power to impose tariffs for national security, a power the court now says has limits. The decision is a clear check on executive authority, insisting that sweeping economic policies require more than a presidential signature. The world is left asking, is this the end of trade wars, or the start of a new era in global economics? The story began on the campaign trail, with Trump making trade a central issue and tariffs his weapon of choice. Supporters saw them as protection for American jobs. Critics warned of higher costs and global backlash. The Supreme Court has now weighed in, reshaping the balance of power in Washington. The message is clear. The president cannot act alone on such far-reaching economic matters. As the dust settles, the world wonders what comes next for America's role in the global economy. This moment will be studied for decades by historians, economists, and legal scholars. The verdict is in, but the story is far from over. Let's break down what led to this historic decision. To grasp the impact of today's ruling, we need to understand tariffs, a tax on imported goods. Tariffs are used to protect domestic industries by making foreign products more expensive, a classic protectionist move. The Trump administration revived tariffs, arguing the U.S. was losing in global trade, especially with China and the EU. The legal basis was Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, allowing tariffs for national security. Trump's team used this broadly, targeting everything from steel to washing machines. Critics argued this was a misuse of the law, disguising economic policy as national security to bypass Congress. Allies like Canada and Germany were hit, sparking fierce debate and legal challenges. Were these tariffs a legitimate defense, or an overreach that hurt American consumers and global alliances? This fundamental disagreement set the stage for a showdown in the courts. The Supreme Court's decision would ultimately decide the fate of this controversial policy. Now let's look at how the legal battle unfolded. Lawsuits against the tariffs began almost immediately, led by businesses hit hard by rising costs. Their argument the president had overstepped, using national security as a catch-all justification. The government countered that the executive has broad discretion in such matters. For years, lower courts hesitated to challenge presidential authority on national security. But in 2024, a key appeals court questioned whether Congress intended Section 232 to enable broad trade wars. This created a split in the courts, making Supreme Court review inevitable. The justices focused on the limits of presidential power and Congress's role in regulating commerce. Could a president declare any import a security threat? The skepticism was clear. The world watched as the Supreme Court prepared to decide the boundaries of executive power in trade. The stakes, not just tariffs, but the very structure of American government. After months of anticipation, the court was ready to rule. The outcome would reshape the future of U.S. trade policy. The legal showdown was set. The verdict would have global consequences. On November 18, 2025, the Supreme Court delivered its verdict, a 6-3 decision curbing presidential power under Section 232. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that, "National security is not a blank check for the executive." The court found no clear link between imports from allies and genuine security threats. The ruling invalidates the tariffs and reasserts Congress's constitutional authority over trade. The majority stressed that emergency powers can't be used for long-term economic policy. The dissent argued for judicial restraint, saying national security decisions belong to elected leaders, not judges. The decision takes effect immediately. Tariffs on steel, aluminum, and other products are now illegal. Customs will stop collecting these duties and companies may seek billions in refunds. The process of unwinding the tariffs will be complex, but the message is clear. This era of trade policy is over. The separation of powers has been redefined. The economic impact was immediate. Financial markets erupted as the news broke. The Dow soared, European and Asian markets rallied, and currencies of U.S. trading partners strengthened. Companies reliant on imported metals saw their stocks surge. While U.S. steel and aluminum producers tumbled, cheaper imports are expected to return, lowering costs for manufacturers and potentially for consumers. The ruling is a blow to protected industries, but a boon for manufacturers and families facing high prices. Economists predict a disinflationary effect, with prices for goods like cars and appliances set to fall. The end of tariffs could ease inflation, offering relief to household budgets. The ripple effects extend from Wall Street to Main Street. The decision marks a dramatic shift in economic momentum. The world is adjusting to a new reality. The aftershocks are just beginning. Now let's see how the world is responding. World leaders, especially U.S. allies, welcomed the ruling as a return to stable, rules-based trade. The EU and Canada praised the decision, hoping for renewed cooperation. U.S. business groups declared victory, calling the tariffs a self-inflicted wound finally healed. Manufacturers and retailers anticipate rebuilding supply chains and lower costs. But not everyone is celebrating. Steel and aluminum unions decried the ruling as a threat to American jobs. Former President Trump called it a terrible and sad day, vowing to keep fighting for U.S. industry. For consumers, there's hope for lower prices, but anxiety lingers in communities dependent on protected industries. The ruling has divided opinion, highlighting the complex impact of global trade. It's a stark reminder. Policies made in Washington have real consequences for everyday Americans. The debate over trade is far from settled. The world is watching America's next move. The data tells the story. Tariffs slashed imports of steel and aluminum by 40%. With the ruling, imports are expected to rebound, benefiting manufacturers but challenging domestic producers. Job losses may hit steel towns, but gains are projected in industries like autos and construction. The Peterson Institute estimated tariffs cost U.S. households $1,200 a year. Their removal could lower prices and inflation. The global economy stands to benefit, with the IMF predicting renewed growth as trade barriers fall. Countries hardest hit by the trade wars, China, Canada, Germany, are poised for recovery. The decision could add a significant boost to global GDP. For the U.S., the shift means more competition, lower costs, and a new era for consumers and businesses. The numbers are clear. The economic landscape is changing fast. The world is bracing for the next phase. The question: what does this mean for America's future? Let's find out. Most economists agree. The ruling is a net positive for the U.S. economy. Lower costs and prices will boost growth and create jobs, though some industries will face painful adjustments. Critics warn the decision doesn't address unfair trade practices by countries like China. The U.S. needs new strategies, working with allies, not against them. Legally, the ruling is a landmark for the separation of powers, reaffirming Congress's authority over trade. It sets a precedent that could affect a wide range of executive actions. The political debate over globalization versus protectionism is far from over. Some leaders will push for new protections, others will embrace open markets. The decision forces a national conversation about America's economic future. The path forward is uncertain, but the old rules have changed. The world is watching how the U.S. will lead in a new era of global trade. The next chapter begins now. The Supreme Court's decision closes a turbulent chapter in U.S. and global trade. The ruling signals a return to predictable, rules-based commerce and limits on presidential power. The challenge now support workers in affected industries while seizing new economic opportunities. The U.S. has a chance to re-engage with allies and address global challenges together. This is about more than economics. It's about America's role in the world. Will the U.S. lead through cooperation or conflict? Today's ruling opens the door to rebuilding trust and shared prosperity. The choices made now will echo for generations. The debate over America's place in the global economy is just beginning. Your voice matters in shaping that future. Stay informed. Stay engaged. Thank you for joining us.